Welcome to another episode of the Creative Power Hour. I'm your host, Marcus Whitney, and today our guest is Dynamite, Don Hardin. What's up, brother?
What's going on?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Thank you for being here.
Oh, happy to be here.
Yeah,
you say come, you say call, or come, I come running.
Man,
so.
I appreciate it, and you've been a really important big brother to me in this Nashville business ecosystem. So I want to thank you on the record for being one of the people that has consistently looked out for me. I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So with that, man, we start these shows with an origin story, and I'm really excited to hear yours.
Okay. I was born here in Nashville, born and raised. Grew up in a community called Trinity Hills, which is a northeast part of town.
I don't think I've ever heard of Trinity Hills.
It's Trinity Hills is it's bounded by Whites Creek and Trinity Lane.
Okay, I know where that is. Okay.
Yeah, so we don't really get much mention. But I started out there about 8 years old. Before that, I was living in South Nashville.
Okay.
But grew up in Trinity Hills. In fact, my mother still lives in that neighborhood.
Wow.
That's where Thanksgiving and Christmas go down.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But went to Maplewood High School and then finished up at Tennessee State University. A degree in architectural engineering. And from there, I got hired by a large construction company that moved me around in several states for a few years, and before I came back to Nashville. So that was quite a journey to go away and come back. So
why did you pick architectural engineering?
That's interesting. Honestly, my mother was not the type that says you're absolutely going to college or nothing else. And I think my math teacher in high school noticed that I had a skill in math. I think I was happy to finish that session of math after my junior year.
Yeah.
I'm done with math.
Right.
And I was actually taking art class.
Okay.
And the math teacher, when I walked past his door when they changed classes, he would say, "Donald, you need to get back into," that's what they called me in high school. Donald, you need to get back into math. You're good at math. You need to get back into math. I was thinking, I really don't want to do that. After a number of tries, even me trying to avoid his classroom, I would go up and down other stairs to avoid hearing him tell me that.
Yeah.
Something told me one day to listen to him, and with that, I actually went and withdrew from the art class, jumped in his more advanced math class. That math class took a tour at TSU, and we started, become interested in engineering. And so I think all the time about, making a student listen to a teacher when they really don't want to.
Yeah.
Something said, you listen to them.
Yeah.
But I think that turned out to be a positive thing for me, because I may have ended up in college, but that kind of closed the deal for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your experience at TSU back then. Because I feel like historically black colleges and universities were different than they are today. Is that?
I think definitely, using the term back in the day, it felt fun. It felt energetic. It felt like a lot of learning going on. It felt caring. You definitely felt not that they don't experience those things now. But honestly, it felt safe. Felt safe. Some of the things I'm hearing in some of our HBCUs now, kind of scary, but definitely a good place. I think it
and not all of them. I mean, TSU is actually doing quite well.
Yeah, they're doing
amongst all the HBCUs right now.
Some of them are closing their doors.
Right?
Closing their doors.
Right. Exactly.
And we certainly don't need that to happen to our home team, TSU.
Right.
But that certainly happens. But I think it gives you a well-rounded experience.
Yeah.
You learn things that maybe you don't think you're learning, like how to maneuver. Standing in line for long periods of time, registration, and then you felt like, well, somebody has to be doing this better than we're doing from a technology, and when you feel a little bit antiquated, but I think if you stick through it, you you felt like you should get some credits for registering,
right? Just for getting through it.
Yeah, and then of course like most colleges, you have bonds that you can't get anywhere. But I think at TSU, from what I see in non-HBCUs or majority white colleges,
Right.
is that those black students on those campuses have to form an alliance.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? They kind of have a group, and I'm not sure how that's received. You know, you get the picture that on those white universities that they look at the black kids like that group over there, like, you know, that like they herding over there, and and that's their group, but not really, you know, not really part of the
greater thing. Yeah.
At a HBCU, you're everywhere. Everybody's everywhere.
Right. There's no need to click.
Right. There's no need to click. You get to meet new people across the spectrum, and most of the time when folks have homecoming, as HBCUs do, then the relationships are vast. They're wide and not narrow. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like,
I do.
Like some places might be.
Yeah.
So I think, and you know, my son went to HBCU, and so to see his experience as well, you know, kind of says, okay, you know, HBCUs are still in good hands. They need to stay strong.
Yeah.
But definitely glad I had that experience.
I mean, they clearly need to be better supported than they are right now.
Right, definitely.
So okay, so you graduated from TSU, and then you
got hired by a company called Fluor Daniel.
Okay.
They're the Fluor Corporation now, and the publication that looks at engineers and contractors is called Engineer News Record.
Okay.
They rank engineers and contractors nationally all the time. That's the premier ranking. Fluor Daniel was ranked number one when I got hired on. So I was fortunate to work with a company of that size.
Wow.
50,000 people worldwide.
Wow.
When I came in, they had, you know, folks. They were big into going across seas, working on oil refineries, and, you know, from Saudi to Africa to all these different places, and all over the country. But Fluor was a kind of company that really wasn't in a neighborhood. They, you know, like companies around here locally, they may be homegrown and started here and grew.
Yeah.
But Fluor was this large animal that would add on to Nissan's plant or Mercedes-Benz plant, Nabisco. I work with all these different things, these different entities, and they would add on to that plant. And once that expansion was done or the new plant was completed, then all the team members who worked on the project will kind of scatter and go work on another project somewhere else.
Okay.
And in that environment, you know, we have what we call release dates. So if a typical project had a project manager overall, and he had a structural engineer on the job, electrical and mechanical, who manages all these different trades, then the next job, maybe the next job in Texas or what have you, needs a civil engineer.
Okay.
You would literally turn in your resume again to the project manager down there, maybe get a reference or two from your current boss, and you know, and they would look at your rate and all that, and you know, and so you know, the whole what it taught me is like you don't really worry about your next job. You kind of what it taught us for real is if you do a good job at what you do, people are going to want you.
Right. Right.
You know, and unfortunately, I also experienced a glass ceiling there. I experienced the equity, the pay and equity. You know, even going from one job to the next, I had some project managers bring me on to that new job, and they would look at my salary and they would literally say, "Don, we got to get your salary up."
They would say that to you.
You're lower, you're lower than the other guys, and your experience is there. So they would do what they can to bump me up. So, you know, it's an interesting environment.
Yeah, for sure.
So it taught me a lot about survival. It taught me a lot about networking. It taught me a lot about, you know, asking for what you want, going after what you want, and not really sweating over your next job. You do a good job at what you do, and that job holds true today. I've hardly had to market really hard for what we do. Our phone rings all the time, but even when we come up with a marketing scheme every year, and I attribute that to those days at Fluor Daniel, you know, learning those tricks of the trade and business principles, and So I teach that to my colleagues, who work with me
Yeah.
every day. That's invaluable.
So how long were you there?
I was there for about 11 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a long time. So talk about like the tail end, like when you decided to leave. I mean, how many jobs had you done? How many places had you lived?
We
through
lived
that process.
We lived in several places. We lived in upstate New York.
Okay.
Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Okay.
Greenville, South Carolina. Chicago. Birmingham, Alabama. Reading, Pennsylvania. Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Wow.
Places like that.
Yeah.
And those were good. My wife and I used to try to figure out which one did we like the most. And she didn't really want to leave Albuquerque. It's a laid back place.
Yeah.
But I felt it was a little bit dry as far as not just
Weather.
just dry and weather, but just dry and opportunity. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It was a cool place to relax, but
Yeah.
and maybe retire. But every state has their own license plate tagline. Theirs was Land of Enchantment, and I joked and called it Land of Entrapment. You know what I'm saying? It's like it'll lull you in. You know what I'm saying? And it would lull us in, and it's fun to be. But I love Chicago. I mean, I think what we learned is there's something cool about every city across the country.
Yeah, I was about to say, man, you were there for 11 years. I think you rattled off 10 or 11 places that you lived in,
yes.
So it's almost like you lived in a new place every year or something like that, right?
Right. And many times, some of those expansions, the intention was, I can remember going to Reading, Pennsylvania. We were supposed to be there 3 or 4 years. They were going to, we were thinking about buying a home there and that kind of thing. And whatever the market is doing as far as the product market, if it, in Reading, Pennsylvania, we work for a company called Carpenter Technologies.
Okay.
Cartech, they went by Cartech. They make high alloy steel that goes into jet engines and airbags and that kind of thing.
Okay.
And as long as that commodity is up, then they can spend money. They can spend money on expansions and keep going. Right in the middle of our first expansion, that commodity tanked. It went down, so they kind of canceled their next expansion. There goes the livelihood of us planning what to do there. So we left there, sooner than we thought. But during all those times, you would always get to know that city. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? My wife would, when I would get home from work, my wife would know all the shortcuts of how to get around the place. Like, I jump, where are we going? I saw this cool place here and there, So, and she volunteered, lucky to have her, she volunteered with the YMCA, and she ended up getting a master's while we were in one place and working for non-for-profit. So she found something to do.
Yeah.
But when it was time to move, I would always say, hey, there's an opportunity here or here or here. Which one should we do? So I made sure she was involved in that decision making.
Wow.
Because a lot of my colleagues, they would be divorced, and they couldn't really take that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but we enjoyed a lot of the places we lived. We could tell you a little bit, some fun facts about every one of them, and fun stories and friends, friendships. We maintain a lot of friendships over places we go. In fact, I have a couple of business partners. One business partner in Albuquerque. Out of that, we maintain a relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's my story on the travel there.
So when you would leave from one place to the next for an opportunity, what were the factors that you would have in mind that you would consider? Would it be a new experience? Because you talked about the money bit, and I'm assuming money was in there, but was it, this is an opportunity to work on this type of project, and I've never done this before. This will add to my skill set. What were the things you were considering as you thought about moving from place to place?
It was all of that, Marcus. Some of it was the idea of working on the Mercedes-Benz plant. It's like Mercedes-Benz is coming to the United States to build their first plant, and the manager that I worked for on another job, we were doing work on a metals and mining. So Fluor had several divisions, and I worked in a few of them: metals and mining, and food and beverage, and automotive, of course. Uh-huh. And so when we would have opportunities that come up, some of them sounds cool. The city, what city are we going to? I remember having an opportunity to go to New Iberia, Louisiana, somewhere like that, but it didn't sound good. But I ended up not going there. Charleston, South Carolina. It sounded good, but that was actually the time that I left Florida to go work for another company.
Okay.
But it would be a myriad of things. It would be, we're still very young at the time. We
Yeah.
want to be in some city that had some coolness to it.
Right,
You know what I'm saying?
right.
Something fun about it. And then, of course, for me, career, the opportunity to work on some cool project. And I've never had a problem with getting selected. It was never a downtime. I would wish for 2 weeks off, but I never really got that kind of, and I think that's a compliment to be in demand.
Yeah.
To never have to worry about that next job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But all of that, all those decisions, all those possibilities made me say, hey, this city's cool. Let's try this.
So you were there for 11 years. What brought you to the end of that road? Because it seems like, 50,000 person company. I mean, you have opportunities everywhere. You have selection of opportunities. You can't get a break really.
Yeah.
So it didn't seem like you would necessarily come to the end of your road there, but you did say there was a glass ceiling there.
Well,
so
yeah,
talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So lot to say about Fluor. So Fluor was one of those companies, and I'm not sure how many companies do this, but when Fluor hired a lot of college grads, they went to several schools in the South. Mm-hmm. They went to places like Clemson. Fluor was based in South Carolina. They had an office. Irvine, Fluor bought Daniel Construction.
Okay.
Fluor was based in Irvine, California. Daniel based in South Carolina. So these two engineering and construction companies, high-end folks on the West Coast and firmly standing construction company in the South merged, and they kept the name Fluor Daniel for 10 years. They had a myriad of opportunities. Now, what they taught us when they first hired several of us from these schools, the HBCUs they went to were North Carolina A&T,
Okay.
and TSU, and also Tuskegee. I have a great friend that we've been friends over the years. We got hired at the same time. They hired about 35 or 40 people like me, not just black, but white also, every year. And they would run you through for 3 years. They would run you through what they call like a college graduate program.
Okay.
Every summer, they would have us all come back, whatever jobs we were on, and you would have these 3 or 4 day series of seminars. They taught you a lot about, money management, how you get ahead on the job, networking. And one of the networking part really stood tall with me. In my construction career, I kind of picked up the knack and the joy of marketing. So I wanted to go into Fluor's marketing program. So it was a really good opportunity if you were really interested in a program. You would for a whole year, you would go, you would travel, you would get to see all these different kinds of marketing experiences with that group. And so right when I was going to go I was accepted in the marketing program. I had interviewed. Fluor had this scandal similar to what Enron went through. They had this scandal where the top dogs of the company were mismanaging the funds.
Was this a publicly traded company?
Yeah, they're a publicly traded company still.
Okay.
And their stocks have always hovered around 32 or whatever. It's never really recovered.
Okay.
It went from like 80 something to just it dropped. But they had to cut out $100 million out of their bottom line within a short period of time. And the first thing to go was a marketing program. They cut that back. And so they said, Don, we're cutting back the marketing program, but we're going to have you on a nice job in Charleston, South Carolina. Meanwhile, one of my buddies who lives in Albuquerque had been trying to get me to move out west where had been doing semiconductor work with Intel. And finally, my wife, Tracy, we both looked at each other and said, hey, she said it before I did. Hey, what about Scotty? What about calling and reaching out to Scotty? And of course, I did, and it kind of worked out that they needed a project manager out there, and so I literally worked for Fluor and a company called Lockwood Green at the same time for like a week.
Okay. Okay.
I took a vacation time and went out to Albuquerque, started working out there to kind of feel things out.
Yeah.
And I pack my bags and move.
That was that.
from South Carolina to back to Albuquerque. So that was that. So it was kind of a clean break. You know, I caught havoc from my mentor. My mentor was an awesome guy. His name was DeWitt Porter, and he was a UT graduate, black guy, real farm kind of, literally a farm kind of guy. And out of the divisions that Fluor had, he was the only black president of a division.
Wow.
Only black guy that ever made president. Well, he was a mentor. He was my mentor. And it kind of hurt me to kind of have to cut away from that. But, you know, but what I did see while I was there is when we would come back to those sessions, and if I met a lot of colleagues, white guys, black guys alike, working at different projects, they would be like promoted to way ahead. You know, they were doing good.
Yeah.
Something's
not working out for you,
right? I knew I'm smarter than these guys. You know.
Yeah.
You know, just having conversations. I knew I had my game was much better. What is the deal?
Did you have a conversation with DeWitt about that?
Of course, we talked about it all the time.
Yeah.
You know? And he would do what he could.
What he could, yeah.
You know,
but he had to be. But he had to be.
Yeah. But he had a whole lot of folks to deal with.
Yeah, I'm sure. In that position, being the only one.
Yeah. So
I'm sure you weren't the only person he was mentoring.
Yeah, he
either.
helped. He helped a lot. He helped a lot of people, and so kudos to him. But you know, I've always been my own guy. You know what I'm saying. And,
I can understand that. I can understand that.
I love you, DeWitt, but it's time for me to cut away. You know? And but I caught it back up with him years later, and he was proud of me of what especially after I became an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But because I kind of went back to South Carolina, heard he was retiring, and all of that. But yeah, so you know, it didn't get lost on me, the mentorship that he provided, and that we all should do, you know, at some point, you know.
So what was the point at which you shifted into entrepreneurship? Did that happen back in Nashville, or
no? Actually, it did happen in Nashville.
Okay.
So friends are everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, guy, you know, Lee Mollett.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
Anthony Holt. I got to give Anthony Holt some credit as well. We've been friends and fraternity brothers since '92, but I've known Anthony since I was in like the 8th grade. And they both worked for a company here in town that was a company that did work in healthcare. They kind of recovered lost revenue in the healthcare insurance industry. But they also started. They did a little bit of development. They established this restaurant, kind of a cool restaurant called Jubilee. You know, that was on Jefferson Street.
Okay. And
didn't really last that long. But nonetheless, Lee was building committee chairman of his church, Mount Zion Baptist Church.
Okay.
And they were looking for a project manager to help them with their expansion. I wasn't really interested in coming home like that, but and we were living in New Mexico. He called me one day and said, "Don, you know, Tony had visited us recently prior to that, and he was like, Tony visited you guys, and he tells me, you know, you might be interested in coming back," which I really wasn't, you know, not like that, but and then I had to convince Tracy that, hey, let's try to come back home. But I flew home to look at the facility, met the architect, and something came over me spiritually, like, whoa, this is, you know, and you meet the members of the congregation, and they would tell you stuff like, man, this project, you know, can't get built if you don't come and do it, you know, because of this soon-to-be mega church. This is when they had just a small, probably 70 members or whatever.
Okay.
And Bishop Walker had a pretty strong vision that probably only he and God knew, because nobody would know that this 70-member church would kind of explode.
That's incredible. I've never heard anyone talk about Mount Zion at a point where they were 70 people. So you were there for that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. When
that is such a hard thing for me to even wrap my head around.
This room, what's interesting, when I came to interview, they didn't just give me the job, right? They knew I came, you know, with a lot of credentials. So I flew to Nashville to interview. It was really, and Lee was like, "Hey, if nothing best is a trip home."
Yeah,
I really wasn't convinced to do it. I was literally promoted I had been promoted a year prior to that to oversee 25 engineers on the Intel site that we were working on in Albuquerque. Wow. So it was like, you know, I'm the man out there. My boss is in Dallas. Yeah. You know, and we had just finished building the house. You know,
Tracy likes it.
She likes it. You know, went through building a house. You know what I'm saying? We're enjoying our house. And so when I flew here, it was like I literally piled up in a room probably about the size of this room.
Uh-huh.
It was, of course, Bishop Walker Lee, and it was like 20 people in there. We piled up. They're interviewing me, asking me questions, and I went and sat in my car for them to make a decision. I'm like, how did I get to this place?
Yeah, right. How?
Well, I just made a trip here, and now I'm interviewing them. I'm sitting in my car.
And now they're making a decision.
Yeah, they're making a decision for me to come back, to be their project manager. They came out and they were all excited and said, Don, we want you to be our PM. And I called my boss in Dallas and said, hey, I'm going to have to leave, and my deal was I took 30 days to find my replacement, so I wasn't just going to leave them high and dry. And then the intent was to come and manage and then start a business.
Yeah.
So that was,
dude, this is blowing my mind.
Yeah, so it wasn't like I've never been that kind of guy. Like, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur one day. It wasn't like I wouldn't resist the thought, but I just.
You got to help me understand, like, what. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've spent enough time with Bishop Walker to know he was probably just as dynamic then as he is now. Mm-hmm. But like, seriously, you just said you were leading a team of 25. You built a house. Mm-hmm. Tracy likes it in this town. You said that back in the beginning of this conversation. And you're going to leave to be a project manager for this 70-person church. I mean, clearly it worked out.
Right.
But like, what made you say yes to that?
It was something truly spiritual.
Yeah.
Because when I came and saw the site, it was a 22-acre site. It was an enormous thing. It was a part of somebody. I think being the path that I had been on, working on large projects, I think that the idea of working on something bigger and something cool, and certainly, I don't do it for the money. You know what I'm saying? Somebody, over the years, somebody's had to pump me up and say, look, you need to charge more for that, in many cases. So I never really do it. I've never really done it for the money. I definitely like paying my bills and all of that. But when I look back, and it's always been true, it's like I like working on cool projects. I like the reason why I work on projects that are not so cool is because some friend asked me to look at it. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to let people down. I want to make sure that if they need help, it's kind of like, hey, they need help. Somebody's taking advantage of them. Step in and help. Yeah. And that's kind of, you end up taking on projects that are not so pretty.
Right.
But I like the idea of working on cool projects that you can that makes you say and I got a few of them. And I like to, nowadays I want to make sure the folks behind me can follow the same thing because when you look at it, the folks who are responsible for deciding on the projects that get done, they're gonna point to their buddies. They're gonna leave somebody out.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? It's not, it may not be a racial thing. It may be more or less like, hey,
who do I know?
Buddy,
no, who do I know? It's
exactly.
Who do I know?
Who do I know? So that's part of me coming back, and part of the deal was to establish a business. We even started a partnership, but ultimately it felt better for me to just kind of cut away and do my own thing, as I've come to enjoy doing.
So how long did the Mount Zion project take?
It took about a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah. We broke. So it was an interesting project because when many churches experience raising money, can you raise enough money? So they were in a catch-22 where they were trying to hire the contractor, but they needed to get moving, and I found a way to get the project moving, and people give money to stuff when they see it moving.
Yeah, that's right. Momentum.
Yeah. Especially churches. It's like, you've been talking about a building program for like 10 years with such and such, but we don't see nothing happening.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I did, because even back then, getting a building permit wasn't as hard as it is now, but it still is a challenge.
Yeah.
But I said, what if we broke ground. We cut off because we needed to establish an overall budget, but we needed to figure out how to move. So what we decided to do was award the site work first.
Okay.
You award that site work, you're moving dirt.
Yeah.
This site work was massive because they had to blast out a lot of rock. So if you've been to Mount Zion or Hickory Boulevard, then that used to be like a big rock.
Wow.
Where the church sits. And
Okay.
we had to line drill and blast rock out of there.
Okay.
And that was a lot of earth movement. So while we released that earthwork, then the other components we could negotiate the price on and get that down and make the bank happy or whatever. So once they saw things moving, it was total excitement.
And what year was this?
This was in 2000.
2000.
I interviewed like 99, November 1999, and I pretty much was moving here November 9. I moved here in December 1999, and we were moving dirt like that spring. You know what I'm saying? Like,
wow.
Like, yeah, it was quick.
Okay, okay. That's great context for me.
Yeah.
I moved here Labor Day of 2000.
Yeah,
so.
And so actually, we had the ceremony in October 2001.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, if you look back at the records, it was like a big deal. Like, people were coming from everywhere, and it was a big production, you know what I'm saying, to have that opening ceremony. It was like kind of crazy.
So you moved here, successful project. Mm-hmm. Now what? Now you're here.
Yeah, now what? So then is, what do I know, right? I remember thinking, what do I know? I'm a small business, but I know big work.
Yeah.
So I decided to be a owner's rep and go after large clients.
Okay, you have to explain for me and our audience what that means.
Owner's rep means is a project manager, dedicated project manager.
Okay.
So I successfully did that for a church.
Okay.
And a project manager or owner's rep that represents the owner, one who knows how to hire the right architect, manage them, engineers, auxiliary in between, manage them, put the RFP out, hire the contractor, manage that whole thing.
Yeah.
It could be a big circus.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, hey, I hired the architect, have a contractor. Why do I need you? They always say that on the front end.
Yeah.
On the back end, when they say, man, we're in a lawsuit, I stopped cursing tonight. I just said, okay, how can I help?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I have a good friend who's going through that right now. He's a medical professional and
never ran anything though, right?
No.
People who never run anything don't understand operations.
No, they don't.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because project management is a valuable
and the thing
skill.
Is what you know and what you don't know definitely can hurt you.
Yes.
It's like it's simple stuff.
Yes.
Just from the start to the finish and hiring the right people. That's important. That's important, and people just, they don't really know how to do that.
Yeah.
And I know how to do that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at that, and all the little nuances and how somebody can beat you, how you can miss things, you know what I'm saying, in a simple contract or whatever. But anyway, that's what.
Okay.
What else you were asking me? Something else that caused me to.
No.
You were asking me about being an owner's rep.
Yeah, I was asking about. I interrupted you when you said owner's rep because you were now shifting into launching your business. So that was super helpful.
Yeah. So being an owner's rep, so it's been interesting. This thought, your questions definitely caused me to think about why we have evolved or changed or whatnot, and so. Networking. I think networking. I definitely believe that networking helped back then because it's like, okay, now you're complete with Mount Zion. What else you gonna do? And so that's when the challenge. I had to really start networking. But I networked with an organization called Project Management Institute.
Okay.
And that's an entity that a lot of folks get their PMP, Project Management Professional Certification, which I did in 2005.
Yep.
But I befriended a guy, and it's a really small world too. I befriended this guy named Hardin, and at the PMI luncheon, you go to a luncheon and you kind of roll up your sleeve. They said, hey, they need some people to be officers or whatever, and I got on committees and whatnot, and enjoyed that whole thing. I learned about PMI when I lived in Albuquerque before I moved back home. Hardy said, let's go to lunch one day. We went to lunch one day, and he said, Don, so tell me a little bit about what you do. And I told him a bit about my background, and he heard me say automotive, and a light went off because he happened to have a project going on in Canton, Mississippi with Nissan. Nissan had finished building this design, and the plant was under construction. And Nissan apparently wasn't happy with the engineer who designed the original facility, but still they needed to design what they call the tool rail system, which is when you're on an assembly line, you have to have lights, you have to have oil, free air, you have to have load assist equipment. Like, you can't have 100-pound women loading the door.
Of course not.
So they have these things that are kind of guide the door. So they have these tool rails and has a structural component to it. Well, Hardy needed somebody to help manage those getting installed. And at first he needed somebody that knew how to develop a schedule. So I was pretty decent with Microsoft Office, and I developed the engineering schedule to get it done. Then he was like, he just assumed, well, Don, you probably wouldn't be really interested in being on site, would you? I'm like, that's all I've done. I love being on site. He's like, well, we need a structural engineer, we need a mechanical engineer, and we need an electrical engineer to be on site and to manage the whoever they hire to install that, to make sure that and so I ended up being the structural engineer on site, and did that for 10 months. And that was one of those things where you're a consultant, but you're trying to grow your business, right? It took me away from growing, and at the time we were the Hardin group before that's another story.
Mm-hmm.
It took me away from growing a business, because you hear like friends like Darryl Freeman would say, hey, you have to work on your business as much as you do in your business.
That's right.
And,
that's right. And that's hard. It's hard to do.
You're a crafts person, unless you and you're worried, and you really come to the point where you can teach folks how to do some things like you do, but they can't be you, you can't be them. So
that's
you
right.
gotta let them go.
That's right.
And that's how you grow. But at the time, I was a consultant, and I worked down there for about 10 months. We finished that first phase. They wanted to do another one. I had to say, no, Hardy, I got to get back to Nashville to start running, the Hardin group.
Mm-hmm.
And Hardy and I are friends to this day, and have worked on other things. But I came back, and I ended up getting a contract through networking with Vanderbilt University.
Okay.
Vanderbilt was building the freshman commons. They called it the freshman commons at the time. It was under construction. Now it's the commons. So that's the campus on the Peabody side of things.
Okay.
So that was fun. And at the same time, I had a contract with HCA. So I thought, man, I'm fortunate. I'm a young guy, Nashvilleian. I have a contract with HCA and Vanderbilt.
Wow.
At the same time.
Wow.
And managing the work some kind of way. But with HCA, I ended up hiring 3 other people, and we created what we call staff augmentation.
Okay.
What HCA were kind of doing, they were upgrading a lot of the hospitals that they would acquire to comply with ADA. It was an ongoing program, and they needed help managing that. And the guy, I remember the manager, he's like, man, this is great, Don. You helping to lay out the architecture and the contractor, getting them lined up. He was like, but we have projects all over the country. How would you manage that? And he asked me that question, and we went in, and we were in the conference room. I wrote on the whiteboard, like, this staff augmentation plan.
Yeah.
And he was like, really? Let's do that. And so we started hiring his people, and that was kind of how our started growing.
Man, so I mean, you just named many of the biggest organizations in town.
Yeah,
fortunately. Kind of rolled off pretty quickly. How were you able to do that?
Networking and selling myself. I mean, I never really sell a gimmick. I'm selling what I can do for somebody. I listen to. And even in our in one of our part of our statement, we say we listen to what that client, what their acronyms are about, what they do. We listen to that.
Yeah.
And then just think about how we can help solve their problem. that's what we do.
A lot of times in entrepreneurship, especially like for creative entrepreneurs, and I just think this is so interesting. One of the big problems is product market fit, meaning like, do you really have a market for the solution that you're providing? And one thing that is just hit me over the head about your entire story is you're getting pulled into everything. You know what I mean? Because the skill that you are providing that started as something you didn't even know that you were going to be interested in, you were going to go into art. You kind of got a gravitational pull because of your teacher, and you decided to listen to them, and you take a course and you graduate from TSU with this particular degree, which gets you recruited into this company where you're never having to worry about where your next job is going to come from, and then you get pulled into this Intel job, and then you get pulled here, and then the next thing you know, it's like HC. It's like at no point are you like wondering where am I haven't heard any struggle for work.
Well, okay.
Yeah. Am I missing it?
Well, no. So definitely, I tell people all the time. I can remember the days when I was at doing work on the Canton, Mississippi project.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you can negotiate all kind of stuff as far as how to get compensated, how to get paid. Barge Wagner Summer in Canton, the company that I did the work for at the time.
Okay.
They started an entity called Resource Tech.
Okay.
In-house, and Hardin, he actually helped the company come up with that concept, and that is engineers are always in demand, and 1099 people are always available out there. So the two other, we were the three amigos. It was Don. It was a guy named Jorge. Jorge was a mechanical guy, and Freddie Briceño, guy from Venezuela, he was an electrical guy. But we had fun. We ate together all the time, and we helped solve each other's engineering problems all the time. Just a fun group. But those two guys worked for Resource Tech.
Okay.
They got paid every Friday.
Okay.
They offered me the idea of working for Resource Tech. No, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be on my own. No.
Yeah.
But that meant that I had to wait to get paid when they got paid from Nissan,
right,
which was not often, right? And so here I am keeping up, trying to upkeep a little apartment down in Canton, Mississippi, it's outside of Jackson, and my apartment here, and I'm the breadwinner. My wife is not working at this point.
Okay.
We got our son in school. I think he wasn't quite in private school at the time, but it was like, oh man, those were the days when you butterflies in your stomach. Here I am finishing this project there. So definitely you got butterflies in your stomach.
Yeah. I mean, there's work there, but the realities of being an entrepreneur and where you sit in the food chain when you're playing with these big companies in terms of like, okay, when are they going to pay and, AR and AP and sort of all that stuff. You're basically saying like that doesn't change. Like you were still in demand, but your choice to be an entrepreneur meant you still had way more on the line.
Oh, definitely. It sounds glamorous, like somebody was doling out.
Yeah. I mean, because I know
it was that I'm saving. I'm glossing over the struggle part. I mean, certainly a struggle to get that yes. I'm saying that you negotiating with, and I can remember with Vanderbilt. That networking thing is strong. Right?
Yeah.
And it's not just BS networking. It's genuine networking. I can remember like before a holiday, I had been networking with a couple of guys at Vanderbilt, the decision makers out there, for a while, and they were telling me, yeah, Don, nothing. We don't need anybody right now, but just hang in there. You think, oh, they just bullshit.
Yeah,
they're really not going to hire me or whatever.
That's right.
Or bring us on.
That's right.
But I still kept calling, and I can remember one Christmas I called to tell this gentleman, hey, Merry Christmas. I was just go, just one of those warm things. Instead of Christmas cards, I may just pick up the phone and call somebody. Well, when I called this guy, he said, Don, your timing is good. I'm going to have some work for you. Call me right after the New Year.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And it was exciting. It came through. It happened, just like he said. And it just let me know that, never give in. If you know yourself when you're pest to somebody. Right?
Yeah, right.
You know when you're okay.
Of course. Of course.
You know what it feels like to be pestered.
If you're self-aware, there are those people who don't who don't know, like when they're actually becoming a pest, right?
Successful.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, when you're.
I feel bad when one of those people reaches out to me, and I know, like, when I feel irritated, right, by it, my first instinct is I just feel bad. You know what I mean? Because I know this person likely doesn't know that they're irritating me, and they think they're doing something that's helping develop a relationship, and it's like actually the opposite. So so there's a real art to knowing that balance, right? You know what I mean?
Yes, it is.
Not just being self-aware, but also caring enough about other people's time.
Exactly.
And their political capital to not ask them to do things that would put them at risk, you know what I mean, for you and things like that, right? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, definitely. All of that's important, and you look back, and at the end of the day, you just try to treat people like you want to be treated,
right?
And I think that folks will when the answer is no, but I think that once you get your foot in the door, you just bang it out. And again, the word's are going to get out. I mean, we've had some. When I worked for Fluor, it felt like I've never, even though we had struggles on projects, I never had a project that people talk about where it failed, like something collapsed or somebody went so far over budget. I would hear these stories, but I'm like, that's never happened. I never had that experience. I've always been around folks that have been on top of stuff.
Yep.
Well, if you do this long enough, you're going to run into maybe you don't look at them as failures, but you look at them as opportunities.
Yeah.
We had a chance to. So that part about being an entrepreneur and the growth for us, at some point, you listen to feedback and you're wondering, okay, I'm not getting the opportunities. If going from an entrepreneur to or a consultant, I should say, to a contractor. I can remember a guy who ran a large construction company around here. He was like, Don, I don't know how you do it. You can't grow if it's just you by yourself. Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I took heed to that because a lot of folks had been like, a lot of clients would say, Don, we're frustrated with these contracts. Can you just build it? And I finally decided in 2005 at the same that year that I got the PMP to get a GC license, and so that kind of opened up more doors. So we've been a general contractor. We're still a general contractor, and the project manager alike. Because
what's the difference?
The difference clearly is a construction manager at risk actually has to pull a contract and build that. They enter into a contract with the owner to build something and be responsible and at risk. They hold all the contracts with the subs, and
that's the general contractor.
That's the general contractor. Yep. And a CM at risk. The difference between a general contractor and CM at risk is most of the time the general contractor submits a hard bid against others on a project.
Right.
And he bids
basically saying, here's the cost. I'm going to take all the risk, but I'm so good that I'm going to make a ton of upside on this, and I have confidence in myself.
Yes.
Is that the basic pitch?
I mean, you mean on a general construction side?
Yeah. Well, on a general contractor side.
General contractor side.
Like bid versus bid. How?
Yeah. They're bidding. Most of the time, it's a lower bidder that gets the job.
Wins, right?
And Nashville used to be. It's interesting how Nashville grew from a place that you would have 8 bidders because there's not that much work to go around.
Yeah.
It went from like 8 bidders on a medium size to large size project to maybe just a couple, maybe 3 or 4 bidders to we don't bid work, we negotiate work. You have some of these contractors that say, oh, we don't bid work, we negotiate work. But then all these bigger pieces come in. When the music.
What does it mean when we say we don't bid, we negotiate? That means we're not going to submit a bid.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll talk to you.
We'll sit down and come to the table, and you tell us what the opportunity is.
Right.
And we'll kind of figure our way.
If you work with us, that's the construction manager side.
Got it.
So, and I should have finished explaining that the general contractor is the one that hard bids a completed set of drawings that architect puts out.
Got it.
A construction manager joins the team earlier in the game before the drawings are completed to help the owner kind of decide his budget and to help the help the architect price.
That's much more tightly connected.
Yeah, much more tightly connected. So, but how do they still have to be competitive in a sense, and most of the time that CM at risk contract is won by using, like, showing what your fee might be and what your overhead might look like and general conditions might look like compared to the other 4 or 5 guys who may want the job.
Got it.
But we can't give you a hard price yet because the architect hasn't completed the job, the drawings yet. But once we do, then you know what my fee is going to be, you know what my staff is going to be like, and then I'll give you the rest later.
Okay.
So that's the difference between a CM at risk and a general contractor.
So, in a city like Nashville right now, and Nashville is not the only city to be going through a massive construction boom. Washington, D.C., Austin, Texas, Seattle, Brooklyn, New York. Okay, I mean all of New York, but Brooklyn, New York. I was in downtown Brooklyn this weekend, and it's like, man, I have this picture. I got to send it to you. Because they're building skyscrapers in downtown Brooklyn now. Okay. Which is like,
I'm going to see that next month.
Which is crazy, Don. Okay. Like, Brooklyn doesn't have skyscrapers or didn't have skyscrapers ever. The skyscrapers were from Manhattan, right?
Right. You didn't feel like that with Brooklyn. You're right.
Man, I got a picture from downtown of like this one old school building that's like 2 stories, and next to it there's like a 45-story building next to it. It looks crazy, right?
They go with like a glass look, like a.
Yeah, basically. Okay. I mean, they all kind of look the same. There's no integrity in terms of the artistry.
Okay.
I shouldn't say none, but not enough.
Not on the first glance.
Not enough. Yeah, okay. Not enough. So in these cities that are going through these big booms, right? What is going on with the marketplace for general contractors and construction managers? Like is this like a boom time for your industry, or is it?
It definitely is. And when you think back, and again, pretty fortunate to have worked on the Music City Center. Nashville was on its way to, spreading out a little bit.
Yeah, but it hadn't hit yet.
But it hadn't hit. But when the Music City Center was built, it was obviously the largest expenditure the city has done, $415 million expenditure on one project. The city hadn't done that, and at least not in my lifetime, on one entity like that. And I can remember where we're going to get these resources. We have to pour tons and tons of concrete, and who in town can do it? So all these other resources come from out of town, and the whole thing, when you have a town that's been somewhat sleepy, not a lot of construction going on, all of a sudden you have lots of it going on, then you have an issue. Every project talks about where you're going to get the resources. Right. When these projects are doing presentations to the owners, they're selling we can get the resources. It's not just, we can do it better and faster. They're having to convince you. Don't convince me with,
how good you are.
Yeah, how good you're. Convince me. Show me how you can get the resources. That's always part of the talks here late in the last 10, 15 years in Nashville.
Yeah.
So the number of people interested in the industry versus what's available in the industry it's a rough sale. While it's a boom town, but those who can do it could do well. Now, in our community, you didn't ask me this question, but in our community, in the African American community, it's not enough folks ready to do stuff.
Yeah.
It's not enough folks interested to take this jump and leap and stay in construction.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough animal.
I mean, it requires a lot of infrastructure, a lot of company infrastructure to be able to do this. And, African Americans historically just haven't been in the American free market economy very long, without
Right,
interruption,
right,
without
right.
periods of interruption, right?
Right.
To be able to build up the kind of resources. Like I got in the entrepreneurial game, let's just call it 12 years ago, and I've stayed, the internet has been an incredible boost for me because I don't need to have any infrastructure. You know what I mean? I bring my creativity and I bring my working knowledge of how the internet works, and I can create business models. If you had to take me and what I know and put me in construction, man, I drowned. I would drown because, and I'm one of the more well-known African-American business people in Nashville or whatever, but I couldn't do it. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't have that legacy of infrastructure. At least I don't think so. Maybe you could tell me that I'm wrong right now.
The thing it's not hard to get into, but it's hard to stay with.
To sustain, yeah.
I mean, so a lot of people argue about, well, they have these bonding requirements. A lot of people want to, they're not totally wrong to say that there are a lot of roadblocks that keeps us from getting into the game or being successful.
Right.
But at the same time, if somebody's building a house for you, Joe Blow, Uncle Jack down the street, and maybe he can hang a couple of pictures, but you want him to build a house without an experience just because he's black or whatever. And
it's not business. It's not how business works.
No, it's not. And so, oh no, I'm not worried about you having insurance. And if something,
Right.
you putting all your money in there, you putting all your money
Right.
into it. You're the man, right, of the house, and your wife is worried to death, and we've scraped up all our savings, and you want to put things in this guy's hands to build it, and maybe he will take your money and go do something else. These things happen. Now imagine applying it to a real large-scale type project and putting this thing in somebody's. That's why we need to prove ourselves on. We need to prove ourselves on paper for us and for everybody else. We need to show credit-worthy. We need to have all the goods and not really use it as they won't let us in because they're saying we got to have this at the door. Well,
right.
This is true. But you got to have yours at
but
the door.
But that's the stakes of the game.
Yeah, you got to bring it. Yeah.
Look, construction is not. We look at it and we look how fast these things go up and sort of all this stuff. But at the end of the day, this is a high reliability business.
Yes.
I don't want jokers building these buildings because I got to get in the elevators of them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like. They need to work.
Definitely, they need to work, and they need to be safe.
They need to be safe, man.
And,
this is not that's not the place to play any kind of games. Right.
Right. And anybody who's been in this business anytime at all knows that you got to deal with the warranty stuff too, right?
Yeah, right.
So got to be safe, got to be well done, but. What about the warranty? If it's not well built, you're going to get called back.
Yeah.
Forever, right?
Yeah.
And so you're trying to focus on the next job, but you're getting called back because somebody did shoddy work.
Right.
Or your team did shoddy work. So you want to hire the folks that's going to flat out do a good job and
the first time,
and and stuff happens. And
when
stuff happens, they're gonna take care of it. They're gonna correct it quickly, or they're going to honor their word and all that stuff. You don't want folks that is going to, that don't have a good track record, and when something goes wrong, they don't have the wherewithal to take care of it. That's the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
People you have to have the wherewithal. You have to have the money in the bank. You have to have the wherewithal to overcome things when it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if people kind of understood that, we'll spend less time fighting the man, if you will, and more time just, and we're gonna always fight that situation, right? I mean, I got stories, right? We don't have enough time, but I got stories that of the wrongdoings, but we're still here, and our partners, the guys I deal with, we talk about it all the time, and we got to be strong, and we got to leave something behind for the next group. The thing about a lot of our companies, we build these companies, older guys that our forefathers have built companies, but when they get older, they don't really have established something they can pass on.
Right.
Well, like I tell people like Turner Construction, they just have 100 years on everybody else. How do they get that? the young guy that runs it now wasn't around.
Yeah, right.
It was passed on.
Yeah.
They have a method of passing on and growing, and there's no reason why we can't do that too. We just have to have this mentality that when the next guy in my office is ready to take it on, you can change it from Don Hardin Group to whatever if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have that mentality that we letting it. Why should you have to go and start over?
Right.
We've
Right.
planted the seed and foundation. Why don't you take it in some other level that I couldn't even imagine?
So run down some of the projects you've done here in Nashville that might be noteworthy. I mean, you've already said Mount Zion and Music City Center. What are some other things?
First Tennessee Baseball Park.
Okay, that's a
where,
big one where Nashville Soccer Club
yeah,
plays first
yeah.
2 seasons.
Yeah,
Yep.
we had fun on with the band box.
Yeah, okay.
And I was hands on that part of it, but the whole thing. But let's see. I talked about Vanderbilt projects.
Yep.
I'm working on the National Museum of African American Music.
Amazing.
That's going to be really fun to work on. Let's see, what else? I think that those are the highlights.
Those are pretty good, man. Those are all
yeah.
big destinations. Music City Center, obviously massive, but
and we've done work in some significant work at the airport here recently.
Okay.
So
airport's looking good, man. You know?
It's coming along. We did the TSA DEA office build out underneath the Southwest Wing. That's something that you can't see unless you're part of the TSA team.
Right.
But that was a significant, nice office build out. We turned the dungeon into a beautiful little 12,000 square foot place.
That's awesome.
So we like doing stuff that they're going to call us back. So
awesome, man. Awesome.
Yeah,
well, I'm glad to see you getting the recognition that you deserve for the role that you've played in bringing some of these really important things to the city. It's great to see you being included in like the Power 100 and things of that nature. And I learned a lot in this conversation because I see all this stuff happening, but it's like you talked about, like what you know and what you don't know. I tell people all the time, I don't know real estate. You know what I'm saying? I don't know real estate. I don't know construction. I see all this stuff happening around me. Just because I know business doesn't mean I know that business. I don't know that business. And, it's.
But you know what you know. I mean,
I know what I know.
Yeah.
I know what I know. And I know people who know that business. I know you. And I hope for the listeners and the viewers that this is helpful to just create a little bit of context for what they're seeing happening around them, because it's an anxious time, right? Where there's a lot of excitement and a lot of hope and also a lot of concern about the rate of growth of development. I mean, I like to say I'm not stunned by things, but I will say in the last year, I've driven into neighborhoods that I hadn't been in, and I would just call it months. No, I wouldn't even call it like a full year, and drive through them and don't recognize them anymore. You know what I mean? Just don't even recognize them. I'm like, where did that come from? What, and so this thing is happening so quickly that when the recognizableness of the town starts to fade, your connectivity to the town starts to fade because it feels like it's changing right underneath you. And it's like the things that I recognized and I sort of identified with, when those things change this rapidly, it's like, okay, well, is this the place that I fell in love with? And Nashville's not the only place going through this. You know what I mean? Like this is happening around the country in the urban core. These cities that are having success at economic development and corporate relocation and things, like Nashville, are also going through major development, and so your context for this is kind of helpful,
Yeah, thank you. I think I have I'm one of those short guys who has a son taller than me, and I can remember watching him play soccer. At some point he's gets lanky and that growing pain. He's running past the ball, right? It's like you're some kind of way your coordination has to fit, right? And I feel like the city is a bit like that. It's like we're growing so fast that things like that should be coming along, like education. It's embarrassing that our education system is not where it needs to be. and diversity. So we're growing. Everybody's happy, and you get everywhere I fly. I fly a lot,
dude.
And you hear people talk about Nashville, and just kind of sit back and listen, and people just think Nashville is just so great, but. Not that we're not a great city in a way, but we're not a great city in a lot of ways. People know the fun side. They know we can go to Broadway. We can have a good time. We can get the best drinks ever.
Oh, we kill the tourism thing.
We kill that. That's the folks that are saying
right.
Nashville's great, but the ones who are sitting back saying, "Wow, we're growing past we can't keep up with the growth."
Yeah.
Our infrastructure's not there. The road, we're sitting back watching the roads just the traffic just compile.
Destroy it, right.
I mean, it used to be, hey, okay, at 3 o'clock, you got to get out of here by 3 o'clock or else you're going to be caught in traffic. Now it's any time of day.
Yeah, it's any time of day.
It's any time of day, right? So I mean, the thing with it is when does it go? I mean, you can see when does it go from happy city to kind of a chaotic kind of a place and congestion, and we didn't take care of the things. We didn't even have the courage to vote for transit.
Yeah.
That's a 10-year process to get in place.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're even going to talk about how long it's going to take to get another referendum up or another solution that's actually viable up for consideration.
Hate to throw water on our sunshine with the city's growth, but there's some.
I brought it up for a reason.
Yeah, there are things that the city has to fix.
Yeah.
Seriously. If it wants to continue to be such a great city, or I'm not sure where it's going to end up.
Yeah.
As far as how we're titled.
Yeah.
Or where we rank, if you will.
So let's end on a high note. What does 2020 look like for you?
2020 looks pretty good. I think. I've been doing work out of town, and I'm going to continue to explore those opportunities, and I'm looking forward to completing the National Museum of African American Music. I'm kind of like, not really taking on a lot of serious stuff in the city until that gets built. So 2020 looks like getting that thing open.
Yes.
And it looks like Don and Tracy are going to travel somewhere fun.
Good for y'all.
After that's done.
Good for y'all. I mean, that has been, you talked about the momentum from the church, and y'all been talking about this thing happening forever. I mean,
right.
The number of years where there was that sign in North Nashville saying, "Here lies the site," you know what I mean? And now to see it finally, it's going to open.
Yes.
It's going to open.
Yeah.
And it's
going to change the game. I'm so proud of what the potential of that project, Marcus, is not funny. We have an African American architect. We have an African American led general contractor. I should say that once more. We have an African American architect and an African American led general contractor that's the lead, not like
the lead, not a sub,
but the lead. And when you walk in that project, you see a lot of people that look like me and you doing it, and they're representing and they're learning, and they're going to be able. The city won't be the same with entities like that having taken on projects. Like that. So,
I mean, once you have that legacy piece that you can kind of point to, right. You can kind of say, okay, right. Why can't we do more of this?
Right. So those are the couple of things I'm excited about.
That's incredible, man. That's a high note. That's a high note because. That is going to add so much depth to the city, to the country, to have that institution up and running.
Exactly, and to Music City.
Yes,
it's going
starting to complete the story.
Exactly,
right?
What we call Music City. Now you have another corner represented.
That's right. A very important corner.
Exactly.
Awesome, man. Well, look, I wish you an incredible 2020.
Likewise.
And a great holiday season with your family. And thank you so much for making the time before things got busy with family to do this show, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Again.
For all y'all, peace.